Hi, René here. Today's video is about my brand new Phasemation PP200, its installation into my Hadcock GH242 tone arm, and of course how the combination sounded. In the first part of the video I'm introducing the two candidates just in case you are not yet so familiar with the Phasemation PP200 and on the other hand have already forgotten about the vintage Hadcock tone arm. The Phasemation PP200 entered the market just a few years ago and is a typical trickle-down product. This sounds awkwardly like a urological diagnosis, but it means something quite agreeable, a technological transfer from the top to the bottom of the Phasemation model range. A variety of innovations was made in order to improve the clearly much more expensive cartridges like PP500, PP2000, and not to mention the PP5000. Some of the improvements were transferred onto the absolutely affordable PP200, but sacrifices and restrictions were necessary to cut corners for this entry-level cartridge. This type of marketing promises higher sales numbers than catering for the customers in cloud cuckoo land. Before I integrated the PP200, I disassembled the GH242 to give its part an overdue polish, but also in order to present it to you in detail. At the pinnacle of its fame, its price was almost 1,000 British pounds. Later it dropped to about £780 for the basic version, while silver wiring set you back double the amount. Some of its features are a bit different from the more familiar tone arm concepts because it is a Unipivot design. The arm is not attached to the base, it can easily be removed. When we turn it upside down, we can take a look into the bearing housing and see the tiny pit which is the seat for the thorn. This is surrounded by 4 bearing spheres whose function is to stabilize the arm and prevent uncontrolled movements, a problem the original version suffered from. The designer tried to mitigate the flaw by adding an extra rod with a tiny counterweight, but that caused a pain in the brain, even for patient owners. The final solution was much better. It is, by the way, also used in the Torrance TP82, which goes even a step further, boasting 5 spheres instead of only 4. Furthermore, there is the VPI Scout 2. In the picture you can see the bearing housing from below. A fantastic solution was found for the genuine audio point arm. And finally, there is the glorious Graham, but its price tag is not quite my cup of tea, so let me modestly return to the Hadcock. Here you can see the base with its minimalist design and the thorn which makes the arm hover almost weightlessly. Some people complain this device is hard to set up, but I think they are beginners or they are simply used to the sturdy look of conventional arms and fear a Unipivot might lose its balance only when the dog is wagging its tail in the listening room. But let us not forget advantages like the absence of bearing wear and the ability of tracking even the most warped records effortlessly. I was so convinced that I sold my SME5 in favor of the Hadcock. As you can see, I still have it, but my Benz Ruby was getting a bit long in the tooth and I had to replace it. When we draw the black jewel box out of the cardboard cover, we find a data sheet under it and we can admire the pretentious golden inscription. Let me break the inspection and guarantee seal to begin with. Remove some more paperwork. And we can take a first look at the blue gem inside the luxurious box. Unfortunately, a cartridge can't be swapped like a car battery or new windscreen wipers, but the task of installing the PP200 was surprisingly easy. The cartridge has a nice acrylic protection and can be handled without worrying about the stylus. Some Japanese manufacturers like to torture their customers by not threading the screw holes. Phasemation is one of those sadistic companies. My workaround was to place the nut on the edge of the protection and then to pick it up with the screw. But when I had managed to do so, I had to face the fact that the screws were too long and the protection did not slide sufficiently deep onto the cartridge anymore. Finally, I found screws of the appropriate length and could push the cable shoes onto the pins. The arm is upgraded with cables running from the cartridge straight to the RCA jacks. In my opinion, the only correct way to do the job, because the minute signals cannot be disturbed by anything in the way. I pushed the ground wire through the hole in the bottom of the cylinder and crammed the old cables, which I piously had never cut off, into the socket and locked the lid. Finally, I can put the arm back in its place. After replacing the counterweight on the support, the arm is almost in balance. Now it's time to remove the acrylic protection. The Benz Ruby weighs 10.2 grams and the Phasemation 10.3 grams. Therefore, it was an easy job to go back to the previously used spots and establish the perfect balance again. After 3 tiny adjustments, I reached the desired stylus pressure of 1.85 with the help of my electronic scale gauge. My old orthophone gauge has long been pensioned off, but I have kept it as a museum piece. As I had removed the tone arm and the mount plate, I had to restore the correct distance between pivot center and turntable spindle. After that, I performed the cartridge alignment. No need for the notorious pencil lead and plasticine. A tiny Allen key happened to fit precisely into the step created by the protruding cartridge body and the edge of the head shell. My acrylic alignment tool helped me with VTA, azimuth and SRA by determining that the arm tube was lying 100% horizontal in the grid lines. The stylus was nicely on a vertical line with the mark on the cartridge front, which, in addition, I controlled in a piece of mirror placed on the platter. Finally, the anti-skating weight was positioned in the recommended spot. So far, I have been showing you the procedures of the setup. I apologize for tantalizing you so long and finally proceed to the most important part of the video, the sound of the presented tone arm and cartridge combination after 20 hours of breaking in. I was too excited to listen and did not have the patience to wait if it might improve a little bit more after 100 hours. I did not even have to wait 20 hours to immediately notice the punch of the bass, the wonderfully broad soundstage, the blaze of color paired with the pleasant liveliness of its dynamics, and last but not least, the majestic quietness, the absence of noise. For getting rid of the initial glare, which almost all new components display, I had to bide the mandatory 20 hours, nevertheless. Then I listened to the acoustic bass on Phoebe Snow's Harpo's Blues, where I could hear the whipping of the single strings, and even better on the iconic San Francisco Bay Blues, where Chuck Israels slams the double bass, and it's all full of detail and energy as well. Due to its fine resolution, the PP200 can showcase in perfect slices the musicians sitting next to each other, like in the Haydn Quartet with guitar, and you can measure how many inches John Williams' chair is moved forward to highlight him and his guitar. Even when more than a dozen musicians, like the Concertus Musicus under Arno Kur, play Georg Philipp Telemann's concert for two horns, the space remains stable and realistic. With pop music and small to medium ensembles, you are not very likely to find a fly in the ointment. With really big orchestras, I had the impression of a diminished effect of the usually lustrous ambience of big concert halls. And the music on this record has it all. Orchestral attacks which shake you and your room, kettle drums seem to be exploding, brass attacks blow you over, but sometimes I missed the ultimate laser sharpness and the diamond polishing a fanatic aficionado might crave for. When I mention such sophisticated finesses, my criticism only confirms what anyway nobody denies, namely that the PP200 is a fantastic budget cartridge, but not a state-of-the-art miracle. We should not forget that the PP200 costs only a little bit more than €1,000 and not 5,000 like its daddy, the PP2000, nor €12,000 like the PP5000. There has to be some space left for the dream stuff. If you enjoyed my presentation, I hope to see you again next time in part 2, where I will talk about some additional aspects in regard to the performance of this cartridge. Cheers!